You'll need this one. Happy Halloween, folks. The first Halloween show of the season. Hope you're all keeping well. My name's Anthony Kerrigan, and tonight on the GhostÉire Channel, we're joined by Tom Reilly, famous author, as well. We'll be talking about his book. Also, we'll be talking about Oliver Cromwell, Cromwellian Ghosts of the UK, and also Cromwellian Ghosts of Ireland. If you have any questions, feel free to put them forward on this live show. You can also go to our website, www.ghostére.net, go to the contact page, fill in the blanks. If you have a private message, just put in brackets, private message. Also, if you're affiliated with any paranormal team or tourist attraction, feel free to name the group or the organization, and we'll give a shout out to you. Also, we're coming live via the GhostÉire Channel, the red button on our website, www.ghostére.net. You can watch this show and watch past shows, and also see what's coming up in the future there. Okay, so a few shouts first there. Siobhan Gallagher says, hi, Siobhan. Says hi. How you doing, Siobhan? Also, Eleanor B. Scott. Hi, Anthony. How you doing, Eleanor? Hope you're keeping well. And Christine says, oh, just gives me a hand wave. I think that's a hand wave. I'm not too sure there, Tom. Yeah, I think that's a hand wave. Yes, so we're going to be talking to Tom now. It's interesting. Sorry, now I got a cold as well there, folks. But first of all, the first question I'm going to put to you first there, Tom, is what got you interested in, inspired to write a book about Oliver Cromwell?
Sure. Great question, Anthony. But firstly, I just need to tell you that opening sequence scared the living crap out of me.
There's my face. That would do it there, you know.
I don't know what it was, but it was just so, wow. Oh my God. So in your face, literally. That was amazing. Not being used to it. It just took me completely by surprise. Yeah. So, well, I'm from a place called Drogheda, which is kind of well known to be associated with Oliver Cromwell. And that's how it all started, really. I used to get suspicious or curious, I suppose, is the first feeling that I had years ago about what this guy was about and why did he come to my town and kill all the people there. Seemed like a crazy thing to do, and I needed to understand the circumstances around that. So I hightailed it up to the local corporation and decided to ask them if they had any records from the date that this happened. It was 1649, and sure enough they had. And I had a look, and it's amazing when you see old books going back to the time, and you realize it's really not that long ago. It's only 370 odd years ago, and you're just looking straight at history. You know, you're looking at these beautiful letters and the terrifically eloquent writing, and you know, it's the lost art now because we're all working on phones or PCs or laptops, but they wrote beautifully. Anyway, they wrote in 1649 in Drogheda, there were the names of thousands of people who lived in the town who were very much alive, and that surprised me because I had gone through the Irish educational system, and most of the teachers that I had experienced told me that if not all of the townspeople of Drogheda were wiped out, certainly very large percentages of them were. So you would think, would you not, that the corporation would have something to say about that? Or there might be some, idea of the turmoil that caused, having such a huge chunk of the population killed. Anyway, no such thing. There was nothing. There was no indication whatsoever that any civilians died, and that's what set me off. So it was that whole cynical aspect of not believing what I've been taught. I've always railed against authority anyway. So this was perfect for me. And as the years, and it's 25 now, kind of, that I've been banging this drum, as the years, passed, I've become a lot more confident in my work, and a lot more, because, it's never been seriously challenged by any historian anywhere. And, I get a lot of ranting and raving about people who've been through the same school system that I've been through, but that doesn't quite amount to historical research. So people get very animated about this subject, but suffice it to say, and here's the kicker, Cromwell was a decent, honourable, fair, equitable, and guy who overachieved in his lifetime. So that's where I'm coming from.
Because people watching this now, people would have their own perspectives now. People might be having the same as ourselves or different completely. Like, they might hail Cromwell as well if they're watching from somewhere else. But, we're going to give a point of view of what life was like, especially in Ireland and the UK under, as well, King Charles II, King Charles I. So can you tell us first, though, what was Cromwell, what was he like in his early life, and about his family?
Yeah, and I totally get the even the word Cromwell, Anthony, raises the hackles with some people, because it's the same as saying Hitler, or Osama bin Laden, or one of those horrendous tyrants, Attila the Hun, Pol Pot, Saddam Hussein. Like, it's the same kind of feeling that certainly somebody Irish gets when you use the word Cromwell. But so I've wiped the slate clean and come to this conclusion, having researched and I've written 4 books now on the guy. That a lot of this is just hyperbole and propaganda. But how he started off in life was, he was born into a lower middle class family, not so much a higher middle class family. They had some money, not a lot. His father earned £300 a year for a farm that they ran. His uncle had a much bigger house just down the road. But for 43 years, he essentially was anonymous. And that was up until the Civil War in England started. He just basically was, he became an MP. His father had been an MP before him, and he was involved in local politics, but not to any great degree. Nothing really major happened. He was from Huntingdon in Cambridgeshire, and he just basically found that when the Civil War began, that he was a junior captain in the early stages. But what happened was he suddenly discovered that he had this incredible ability to lead men. But up to that point, he had shown none of that. He was a gentleman farmer. He had farmed the fields. He had even considered, believe it or not, leaving England because of the reign of King Charles, which was a very divisive reign, and it split the country and literally split it in two. So it was a very difficult time for anyone who was opposed to the king, and that became very easy to be opposed to Charles, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. So that's essentially his story. He had considered, and history would have been very different. And a lot of times you think on the quirks of history and how things could have gone different directions if Cromwell had left and gone to the New World, as they call it then, which was America. We would have been complaining about somebody else who would have been given the job of coming over to subjugate Ireland. So he had 9 children up to that point. So domestically, he lived in Huntingdon. Then he had a bit of a fall from grace where he was essentially blacklisted in his own town. He left there and he went to a place called St. Ives, and eventually his maternal uncle died, and he inherited a house in Ely, and that house still exists, and it's still actually called Cromwell House today. So that's all the basic and banal and domestic kind of stuff that brings us up to the Civil War, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned those political leaders there. Sometimes people would frown upon them, from distant, but in their local, in some of their own society, they were hailed heroes, looking like Vlad Tepes of Wallachia, Romania, Vlad the Impaler. He had to do things for his own people,
Yes,
and it was
absolutely.
still, and he was, I suppose he was part of a tribe there that were against the Knights Templar, I think it was there. But I have to go back on that there.
That's okay. He's the original Dracula, anyway.
Yeah. Alice says hi to all. Just a few shout-outs there. Hi to all.
Alice.
Hi, Alice. How you doing? Mary Kate Barry says, hey, good evening to all. How you doing, Mary Kate?
Hi, Mary Kate. What's the crack?
And Suzanne from
I don't expect an answer. Yeah.
You never know, you will. You see that.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. Hi, Suzanne.
Keep you watching then. And Suzanne from Back in Time says, Paranormal Investigator says, hi, or hi, Suzanne. Hope you keep them well. But I suppose when we're going to touch on the side of Oliver Cromwell, I like to see what was it like in Ireland under King Charles I. Sorry.
Yeah, well, it was a very fractious time, all told, around this time, and it's quite convoluted and complicated, both every which way, politically, religiously, economically, but essentially, because of the clever way the English colonized the country, and they did that in quite a lot of places. When Ireland was subjected to the Ulster plantation, for instance, there was a very clever siphoning off of land, and also there was the religious oppression side of things, where Catholicism was a banned faith. Now, I was born a Catholic, and I was kind of taught to believe or to understand or to interpret Catholicism as being, good, and Protestantism not so good, and Ireland good, England good, or England bad. But that's just a load of nonsense, because the Catholic Church has been a cesspit of depravity throughout the centuries, and that's not to castigate the current church or anything like that. It's a fact that if you consider the Inquisitions and the Crusades, and the fact that the popes simply sent crusaders to kill men, women, and children if they didn't conform to the Catholic faith. So, it's always a very emotive statement to make about, old Cromwell hated Catholics. Cromwell didn't hate Catholics at all. What he did was he feared the power of the church. In fact, he was very tolerant religiously. Sorry, I'm going off. I'm so obsessed with this.
No.
Yeah, well, it's just an interesting aspect, and I think it needs to be said that everybody, most people do. And when I say this stuff, and I'm quite used to saying this stuff, people are going, "Oh my God, of course he hated Catholics." Well, he didn't, and the evidence clearly points to this. Absolutely, clearly points to this. He wrote something like 40 letters when he was in Ireland, and none of them mentioned the word Catholic whatsoever. This was a royalist versus parliamentarian war. There was a document he wrote at Christmas in Youghal when he was down there, but that's a separate document. It wasn't a letter, but he does mention Catholicism there, but he simply points to the power of the church. And he had this huge problem with the fact that the church, the Catholic Church, if you didn't conform to their faith throughout history, you died. You were killed. Simply that. And while, he would have gone to school, he would have been taught all this. So he was conditioned in that way. So in terms of the question that you asked me, things were very different in Ireland because we were trying to deal with all these Scottish settlers who had come over and taken the land. The Munster plantation had happened. You had Kings County and Queens County in Laois and Offaly. There was an English part of Ireland, which was the Pale, which Drogheda was in, Dublin was in. So they were gaining a foothold. So by 1641, the Irish had got fed up with this. They got fed up of religious oppression and land acquisition by the English. So they rebelled. Now, at that, so at that time, one would argue that there was peace in Ireland for the previous maybe 40 years or so, but there wasn't really, because it was just simmering below the surface. And you can understand that totally, because I'm an exceptional patriot and I love my country, and I just don't understand why they came over here in the first place. But that's a different conversation.
But it's interesting. I'm sorry, just one. I suppose, if Cromwell came 100 years earlier, no, 1,000 years earlier to Ireland.
Oh yeah.
Then he might have. We could be still more Celtic. We could be more pagan. We could be more the old ways. Worshiping and going to our ancient sites. And we could be more spiritual, as well, not spiritual the way there, but we could be more worshiping the goddesses. Queen Maeve, if
absolutely
someone like Cromwell was there 1,000 years ago to stop the Catholic Church coming over here, like St. Patrick,
That's true. Absolutely. It's a very good point. I mean, we, for some reason, even though we're on the edge of Europe, Catholicism and Christianity, just pervaded the entire country. And I even looked up some figures recently. Even in my time, I was born in 1960, and in my time, and this is not an exaggeration, I'm not just throwing the figure out there, you can Google this, 95% of the population was Catholic in the 60s. That's absolutely massive. So, but again, you know, we speak of this in an emotive way. We think, oh, you know, poor Catholics, and this is shocking, and Cromwell come over to, you know, send them all to hell at Connacht. You know, in other words, you died or you went to Connacht, which is a lot of crap, because, you know, it was basically to do with what side of the war you were on, and it was only landowners who were transplanted, essentially. And you know, this is again, there's so many misnomers associated with this particular period. But fundamentally, and I'm going to give you long answers to every question, so I apologize.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so Charles turned out to be a tyrant and a very firm believer in the divine right of kings, and that basically meant that he was directed by God. And this is a huge aspect of that particular time. It's like we're on a different planet now compared to what it was like then, and it's very difficult to even understand from this distance what life was like then. But religion and God and spirituality and all those things completely pervaded the entire your entire world. I mean, there were Irish. There were stories about Irish people who wouldn't even put on their shoes because they thought they might be spirits, evil spirits might have been in the shoes. So it was just everything concerned religion, and you had to find your place in that whole world of God and religion and spirituality and so on. And Cromwell found his, and to be honest, I find it very difficult to argue with, because he had no interest in the hierarchy to the skies or to heaven or whatever. You know, he didn't want a bishop, he didn't want an archbishop, a cardinal, a pope. You know, because he saw when he had an epiphany. He was about in his 30s, and he became a Puritan, which basically meant that he and his relationship with God was the most important thing, and there's no real religion associated with that other than the fact that they were kind of pure, and you know, they believed that everything should be just simply you and God. But so there were lots of different sects in play at that time. But anyway, Charles proved he imposed very unfair taxes on his people. He was fighting wars in Europe that nobody really wanted, and he ruled without Parliament, which wasn't the deal. He was supposed to rule with Parliament, but because he was the king, there was an 11-year period where he decided that he would rule without Parliament. He kept making these arbitrary decisions. And anyway, he just drove a wedge completely between his Parliament and himself. And then, of course, you know, eventually the Parliament decided to start raising an army. So, you know, then you had the Parliamentarian army and you had the Royalist army, and it was inevitable at some point that they would clash. And the king was the first instigator of that. He raised the standard in 1642 against Parliament.
It's a fascinating thing, because I think there's changes of thoughts, I think, as well, in the way we are living here in Ireland and in England with everything at the moment.
Yes.
That things are going to change with monarchy and Parliament and all that, and I don't know who's ruling who or who's doing the right job as well. It's kind of, even here in this country, there's going to be a change, I reckon. Anna has said this has been a treat of a show. In history, one of the challenges lies in leaving to one side our beliefs, biases, how we've been raised, and actually digging deep to find as much of the truth as facts as possible, often turning heroes into villains and villains into heroes. Great introduction and summary to a time period and events that are not all that straightforward. Thank you for having Tom on tonight there.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Helena. That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, I'm used to being abused, just so you know. And since this is, I presume, we're going to have a lot of Irish people listening. I feel that I'm a sitting duck here, because it's just constant. I get a lot of online abuse, because I'm plowing this furrow, and it's my life ambition to try and address this historical miscarriage of justice. Yes, things happened, terrible things happened in those days, and Ireland was very much a victim. But I'd like to blame the ones who are really responsible, because by blaming Cromwell, we let those who were responsible off the hook, if you get me. So, I just think he's been much maligned, and wrongly so. So I'm trying to right that wrong.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors like that. There was people hidden in behind, bad people behind the leading figure on the stage there,
Absolutely. Names you would never even heard of,
But we're going to talk about Cromwell's military style now, so I doubt there's the knee-to-knee combat. But first of all, is there accounts of something, would he have, with his orders, when he came to Ireland, would he have court-martialed anyone if there was anything like that, like murdering people for no reason there?
Sure. Yeah. It's again, you've done your homework on this, because like one of the main things that once the Civil War started, I'll just go back a little bit, I'll come to Ireland in a second, was that his rules, he had 3 rules when it came to his men, and they were discipline, discipline, discipline. And that was huge. And he was also prepared to live and die with them as they were with him, because he would be to the forefront of most battles. And every battle that he fought during that Civil War, he won. He didn't draw, he didn't lose, he won everything. So he climbed up through the ranks in England, impervious. And of course, the entire world understood or acknowledged the fact that God must be on Cromwell's side. And that's not a ridiculous thing to say, because that's exactly what they thought. Even his superiors would have acknowledged the fact that God was making this man win all the battles. So he was the clear choice to come to Ireland, which he remonstrated with in his conscience for a long time, thinking, okay, should I do this, and can I do this? Now, bear in mind, one of the reasons, but there are several reasons why they came to Ireland. Firstly, the Irish had rebelled in 1641, which we mentioned earlier. Now, the Irish at that point, and it's we have to make sure that we address this, because it's very important for it to get out there that the Catholics in Ireland perpetrated atrocities on Protestants and killed men, women, and children in that period, 1641. Now, it was reported in the UK or in England that those figures were in the 6-figure range. So 100,000, 150,000 Protestants were alleged to have been killed, and the papers sort of promulgated this particular line. Now, subsequently, of course, with research, we realized that the figures are nothing of the sort, but they were exaggerated at the time. It's about maybe 4,000 or 5,000 Protestants who lost their lives. So that's one of the reasons they came over, to quash that Irish rebellion. And they also came over to make sure that the adventurers in London who had committed money to the war, because this is how they used to fund the war. Business people would commit money, and then when Ireland was subjugated, they would divide up the land naturally, and you get your slice of land. So when he came, this is, again, I can't emphasize this enough. He came as an honourable, general who at all times had been honourable in England. And when he came to Ireland, people think he changed his spots. He didn't change his spots. So one of the first things that he did was, because Ireland had been ravaged by war for the previous 8 years, he insisted that his soldiers were to pay for any goods that they found around the country. In other words, corn, milk, bread, whatever they because an army marches on its stomach, and he wouldn't leave England until he had the money. This was a big deal. It was a big. He waited for months until he brought about £120,000, which was absolutely huge money. So when he arrived here, one of the first things he said was, "I'm not going to harm any country people or people not in arms," and these were the orders that he gave to his soldiers. And so one of the lines is that I do hereby warn any soldiers under my command not to do any violence whatsoever to persons not in arms, and that's a direct quote. So these are the orders, and that this is what's set up for the oncoming battle. And when two soldiers, and I assume they could have been soldiers he inherited. In other words, when they came to Ireland, there already was a parliamentary army here, because Parliament, while they were fighting the king, they also sent an army over to Ireland to try and keep the Irish at bay. So they were fighting on two different fronts. But anyway, two soldiers decided to steal chickens from an old woman on the way to Drogheda, and Cromwell wasn't going to tolerate that. So as soon as he found that out, he had them hung. So he hung those two men, and this is absolutely sending a message to the rest of his troops, going, "I'm not going to tolerate this, guys. I told you not to touch anybody, or not to infringe, or not to steal stuff locally," because he had to get food from the local populace. And if the men were stealing stuff, well, they wouldn't, they might struggle to eat. So yes, you're absolutely right. That's what happened.
Yeah, it's great to hear you the side that you're not, and that you're publicly letting us know as well. It's great to hear other sides of the story there. Christine Keane says, "Thank you. I'm learning another side to Cromwell. Grown up were led to believe he was an oppressor and hated the Irish."
Yeah, absolutely, Christine. There's no question about that. And even just if I may say, sorry, Anthony, I'm going to do obviously the majority of the talking. I do apologize. I know it's your show.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No,
jump in anytime.
We're learning off you there, Tom. This is your show as well, So yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
You're very good. No, just the whole notion of, even today, I picked up a book that's on the school curriculum, and this is, I just want to remind people, 2022, and in that book, which is published by C.J. Fallon, and the author is a guy called Dan Sheedy. The book is called History in Focus. If anybody's children is using this at school, please note. And in that book, it says that 3,500 civilians, inhabitants of Drogheda, were massacred by Cromwell, and 4,000 people were massacred by Cromwell at Wexford. Now, this is teaching young, impressionable minds, which has the potential to make fanatics out of them, because I know lots of people feel very strongly about Cromwell, but it's complete. Can I say BS? Okay, BS is as good as I'm going to go.
You're after 12 there.
Yeah.
But
it's complete nonsense, and there's no substance whatsoever to any of that. Yes, a massacre took place in both towns, Drogheda and Wexford, but they were categorically, absolutely, the garrison, people in arms, or men in arms, and that's category. So I forget the question now. Sorry, I was going off on a rant. Oh yeah, so basically what Christine was saying there about being taught that, I was taught that too. Even an article in The Guardian during the week about what's that guy's name? Oliver Callan, who is doing a podcast currently, and it's a live thing. He's talking about how the British comedians don't understand Irish history, and the lead paragraph in that piece in The Guardian this week was, "Oh, the British don't understand that Oliver Cromwell came to Ireland and massacred all the inhabitants of Drogheda." And I'm going, oh my God, still Cromwell has been used to justify atrocities in the north. This is not something that you just get wrong and, it doesn't have any effect. Of course it has an effect. It fosters significant anti-English sentiment, and this is the main problem with it. So Christine, yes, you're absolutely right. We were told, I think mainly what De Valera wanted us to know, if you know what I mean, because the history that I was taught, certainly a lot of it in school, was just bunk.
It's interesting. Well, like I've been educated in both countries here and in England there,
Yes.
but it's surprising though. A lot of people don't know who Cromwell is when he was 16. There was a picture of him. I knew I love my history anyway. I loved it, but there was a picture of him that showed it in a history class in England there. And I was the only person. Does anyone know who this person is? Out of about 40 people, I was the only one that put my hand up. Because I love the Tudor and the Tudor and Stuart period there.
Yes. Well, can I just say, sorry, just on that point, Andy, there's a very significant difference between somebody who's been through Irish school and English schooling, because I don't know of any. I've never said it to an Irish person, do you know who Oliver Cromwell was? Because they know exactly who he was. Now, they might not be able to recognize not a photograph, but an image of him, but in England, it's very different because he's very obscure. They don't tend to promote his life too much. Now, I can tell you, in 2002, which isn't that long ago, I don't know if you remember this, you're probably only a child at the time, they did a Great Britain's competition on BBC Two. So it was to identify the greatest Britain. And do you remember that?
I remember it there, but I forget now who got the top. Was it?
That's okay. Churchill, it was Winston Churchill. Well done. Yeah. That's exactly who it was. Yeah. Now, so you remember that, but what you don't remember is, I'm sure, because you would have jumped ahead of me here, is that Cromwell made the top 10. And they did hundreds. I mean, ridiculously, Bob Geldof and Bono were something like 78 and 83 or something in the top 10 greatest Britons. That just shows you how the whole thing is a bit messed up. But anyway, but Cromwell was a significant player, and in terms of how he's looked at in Britain, it's very different, because he's seen as a Democrat, somebody who got rid of a tyrannical king and created the first republic, the only republic at that time in England. But it was from that period that the model of the king, more or less being a figurehead and Parliament running the country, eventually evolved, and the divine right of kings was gone from after the Cromwellian period was over.
Alan has just said, I understand as I'm a foreigner, but you are making a lot of points, and Charles II was far worse. Standing on our ground as historians in controversial subjects is brave, but it is our duty to give a voice to the voiceless. So well done. I look forward to getting into your books there.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. Just so people know, I don't take royalties from my books. This has got nothing whatsoever to do with money. It's the message. My current book, and is it okay to mention? It's actually there on the screen.
Yeah.
The Protector, but that's a novel, and I want one of the reasons I've done that is to get to a different audience, because my other non-fiction books are clearly heavily referenced and potentially boring. But they're factual. But anyway, this is much more exciting and dynamic, and it outlines Cromwell's life as a novel, and it's an amazing life. But yeah, the reason I'm so pugnacious about this is because I know I'm right. It doesn't matter who you put up against me, and every there are Irish historians, which it really freaks me out, and I don't understand it, because I'm not a. We've had this conversation before we came on air. I'm not a historian. I'm an amateur, and I've discovered this stuff, and I failed leaving cert history at school, and that's something I'm very proud to say, because that, as somebody who did that and who failed history at school, I have essentially overturned a very controversial historic period in this country. When I say overturned, I'm only talking about a very small aspect of this, and this is to do with massacres of civilians. Everything else is kind of I can't argue with, and I'm not going to, I never do, about the plantations, the subsequent plantations after that, because that was the times that were in it, and these are the things that happened, and we can't judge again because it's so long ago. The immediate thing is to do, why did they come over here and take our land? And that's fair, and that's absolutely fair. But I'm saying, that lots of them did, but Cromwell wasn't the worst of them, and unfortunately, he's painted as the worst of them.
Yeah, I just got a few the other statements. I understand there's a foreigner father from Texas, mother from Spain, but you're now making a lot of great points. And Charles II was felt. I think that's the same question.
We think we might have had that again, yeah. That's okay. It's worth repeating, It's worth repeating.
and not much comes up there. It says Charles II even decreed that Cromwell he disinterred from Westminster Abbey that they executed. Yeah, that's an interesting point. We're going to touch on that shortly there.
Yes.
About his death and his execution, which is interesting. And then he'd be executed despite already being dead for regicide. And what's your opinion on his supposed head now at the Cambridge, real or not?
Can I take that now? That question now?
Well, I suppose, go on. So is it real or not?
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem with this, Anthony, is that people should go and get a cup of coffee, because I could be talking for ages about that particular question. Because
I'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, I'll go, because we're going to touch on how he died and all that. There, Alice says so. It still isn't being taught proper in the schools here. Then I wonder if it's taught properly now in the schools in the UK. Then.
Well, that's it's so. I really enjoy the show. It's a really good. The interaction is fantastic. So. Yes, I believe they're a lot more open to a rehabilitated Cromwell in the UK, obviously, than they are in Ireland, and the difference is incredibly stark. I have found and been sent school books that, believe it or not, embrace my work, and I've mentioned in some, and it's not that I'm a megalomaniac, and I'm not. It's just that it's. I suppose I'm taking such an unusual stance in this that it's worth putting into a school book. So I've seen that, but it's not in any school books here. I've been on to, but that particular book, History in Focus, I've been on to the publisher, the author, the National Curriculum Association, whatever it is. I've been on to the Minister for Education. I've been on to the Department of Education, and there's no answer from any of them. I'm seen as a crank. I'm seen as somebody who hasn't a clue what he's talking about. And it's so frustrating. I genuinely don't know where to go. I wish somebody could tell me where to go. I've even sent a letter during the week to History Ireland about this, to say we've got to stop teaching children 17th century propaganda. No response. So it's a very difficult campaign to wage. It's a Herculean task. But I'm up for it, and every opportunity. And thank you for giving me this one. We will talk about ghosts.
I know we will do. Yeah, you've got plenty of time there,
Yeah, at some point.
It's great. Susan says, "I'm back in time." Says, "Would love to stay for the rest of the show, but I have to collect my daughter from work." Very interesting.
Very important to collect the daughter. Absolutely.
I'll catch up on the rest when I'm gone back home. And
thanks,
Kristen
Suzanne.
says, "Where can I buy the book?" We'll go on the details later on the show there, Christine, there, and where people can buy Tom's books. Eleanor says, just a quick bit, I did an AP European and American high school university level history advanced placement, and he was in that course. Okay.
Wow.
But, it's interesting. I hope you don't actually get onto them there, because I don't want to change the books, because then we have to pay for the books next year, but it's free next year, so it's okay. Go on, Tom.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. On my point of view, there, I suppose with Cromwell, I'm open to everything. And I suppose it'd be different if like I'm going back 1400 years ago, then when the Rome entered Ireland as an invasion there, and that's my own personal view there. If somebody like Cromwell or some leading Irish person, chieftain was back then, and then we might have stood a chance. But as you said, food, people march on food, people survive with food, water, the main necessities there. Like, and I suppose what they came with Rome is what we had to go into there, and that's what kept us going, was food and water and money, I suppose, from Rome, and that's how it all came into being there, you know. But yeah, it was just competition time there, folks. Sorry, now I got a cold as well there. So Tom's in the competition as well there as well, but you can be as well. I need you to type one word, and this word is interesting. Well, we're going to be talking about the subject soon. Well, it's about soldiers as well. So the word I need you to type to be having a chance to enter our Halloween mega draw is sentry. SENTRY. I think that's how you spell it. Hopefully that's how you spell it. So
I thought you said century, but century.
Sentries and soldier. Oh no, not century.
Helena's no century.
Yeah, sentry as soldier. As a soldier. SENTRY. And Alice got in there.
Well done, Alice.
I'll put you there. Bit of side there. I'm
going to say it's the way your cold is affecting your accent.
I know, it's my cold. My cold is all over the shop there, you know.
I couldn't understand with the cold. There you go.
That's my cold there, you know.
Brilliant.
So we're going to be touching upon Cromwellian ghosts of the UK. I suppose the first, Christine, you could go in the second as well, just in case Alice decides to go off there. But Christine, you won a couple of years ago the Halloween mega draw there, if I can remember. So we're going to touch upon Cromwellian ghosts of the UK, but it's going to be touching upon, as we mentioned there, Cromwell's death and execution as well. But first of all, can you tell us there, Tom, what were people's thoughts towards ghosts during the Cromwellian era?
Yeah, great question. Well, you know, there's, again, because it was such a fanciful time, it was such a capricious time. You know, it's very easy to accept that huge swathes of the population would have absolutely been convinced of the afterlife, of ghosts, of spirits, you know, anything that was in the realm of the supernatural. Now, you know, there's so much. The problem with all of this is when you do historical research, you have to kind of try and you know, because it's like, for instance, when you know, when Cromwell attacked Wexford, there are accounts there from a particular priest who talks about bullets that were heading for priests, and before they reached the cowl, which is the garment of the priest, where the bullet would drop down, it didn't hit them because they were priests. There were also stories that when the Cromwellian soldiers would dislocate nuns and priests from convents, that they would be sleeping in the beds and they would be visited and haunted by evil spirits and demons and monsters, and some of them to the point where they would actually physically die because of this torment. So, and these are stories that would have been believed and accepted in those days. Now, I'm not saying, because I have no idea whether or not these things were possible, and I would suspect. Just by the way, I just need to put it out there. Where I am with all of this supernatural paranormal stuff is, I firmly believe that nobody knows. That's where I am. I don't believe that anybody can say with any significant conviction that it's one way or the other, if you get me. So,
I totally agree, 100% there. Even world-renowned Steve Parsons there, 5 decades in the business, he still haven't met a ghost. But you know, but what is a ghost? We don't know. Like, you know, so,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't, and I can, you know, and lots of people do. They can sit there and dismiss and pontificate and say, "Oh, don't be ridiculous. Those things ghosts," but you know, that's just somebody's opinion, and it doesn't make one jot of difference to the world, because there's a very distinct possibility, obviously, that all these things are real. there is a dimension that we don't understand. Can I just twist this around? I know we're going down a different road, but just this is what I do. I'm just curious to know because I feel very passionate about this. And can I tell you, I think this is a huge aspect of people's lives, and I think it's the main aspect that you kind of have to get right after family, if you know what I mean. So where you are, or where you fit, spiritually, religiously. I'm not articulate enough to think of another word there, but so like I often, and correct me please if this is not what you would see. So the earth is a planet, and I'm just going to make an analogy now. If I went down to the local beach, I'm quite close to Laytown here, beautiful part of the world, and I could physically, and I can't, pick up a grain of sand. Let's just say one grain of sand, and I had it in my hand, and so that represents the earth. This is a question, by the way.
Yeah.
So, and it's a question for you, Anthony. So don't feel under pressure. But I'm curious to
Try
know
and
what you
answer it
think.
with my cold. Go on.
Yeah. So sorry. Every time I laugh, my ear things are coming out. Don't make me laugh. So that's a grain of sand. Now I'm going to just make the comparison that let's just say that grain of sand is the earth. Okay, so maybe you know where I'm going with this. So if I just stick my hand right into the sand and I take up a handful of sand, potentially, I've got no idea, billions or trillions of planets are now in my hand. Okay, so if I look at the entire beach in Laytown and I'm thinking, oh my God, every grain of sand there represents a planet. How many are there? Now I know, so there has to be a finite amount if somebody was going to count them, because there can't be an infinite amount. But I suppose my point is, firstly, where do we get off thinking that we're the only ones with life on Earth?
Yeah.
That's a statement. And the question is, like, is that anyway close to reality? In other words, am I right saying that, or is there a finite number of planets? And this sort of all leads into the whole idea of, well, are we an experiment? Are we like The Sims or something or whatever? Do you know what I mean? Where is our place in this whole time? So my question is that a fair analysis of things?
I suppose it's what everyone's opinions is. I suppose you could say with a grain of sand, you could say like a kangaroo. Are we guaranteed there's kangaroos on other areas or countries on Earth? Like, when we actually know there's some up in the north. One or two got out a few weeks ago there.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's a time, and then I suppose with time there's distance. I'm always on about time and distance as well. So time is measured in distance.
Well,
so
that's the Jim.
Yeah.
What's that guy's microscope? Is it bent?
James Webb.
Webb. Webb. Sorry. Yes. That whole idea of because I find it difficult to understand. Like, so they've gone back and they can look back. Is it 4 billion years now at this stage?
4 billion years, from using infrared, which is all around us there, and we can see it ourselves there. But they can use it to find far out using infrared there.
Yeah.
But it depends what people interpret as a ghost or afterlife or pre-life or posthumous or whatever. It's I suppose we don't know, and whether it's to do with finding evidence using cameras or have a picture of what we assume as a ghost. But can I just say, so you like if I'm close to looking at the scale of this, if that's what the scale of this is, this whole meaning of life or whatever it is, that there are so many planets out there, that what does all that mean? Like, when we currently by the way, I manage a castle, and in that castle there are lots of stories of ghosts, and currently, would you believe, there's a paranormal investigation. The TV crew are currently doing one this week in the castle, and we've got it's called Ardgillan Castle, and it's in County Dublin. The big the main primary ghost is the lady's stairs. It's a lady whose steps have been called after her death there, and she haunts those. So my point is,
why is all communication, and maybe you've been asked this, and maybe this is something, and I'm sorry, I apologize if,
No, go ahead.
but why is it always obscure and oblique and ambiguous?
Mm.
If there is a dimension out there where there are those who are trying to contact us, why are we listening to, sounds on a paranormal TV show that goes, zoom? Oh, what did that say? That said, I'm going to appear here tonight, or whatever it is. I didn't get that.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I totally know what you mean. If there's something there with another consciousness, I don't know whether we can see it, even with the James Webb. Why are they using infrared when there's so many different other colors or radiation waves that they're using?
Okay.
Could we be? Do we know actually? It could be like another few hundred kilometers out that we actually is another world which we can't see. That we can't find out with our technology there, only a few hundred kilometers out from Earth that's using our conscious minds to make contact with us, or we're making contact with a retro time period there, or a post time period. It's hard to know. Anyway, back to Cromwell. How did he die? How did he die? And his execution there. So.
Okay, well, I've got a very good Cromwell death story. So, and it's kind of linked with the topic we were just mentioning there. So, Cromwell, let's just go through. So, after Ireland, when he was the first one to completely conquer the whole country, because that had never been done, and various English generals had tried it before. So he managed to do that. So when he came back to England, he essentially finished the Civil War in Scotland, and he beat the Scots. So everybody was basically under his command. And he was the chief Lord Lieutenant of the army at that stage. So they kind of weren't sure, they had chopped the head off the king. I probably forgot to mention that before he came to Ireland. So they had no king left. So there's no, they figured they had to have a figurehead of some sort. Now, a lot of the people who would have been much better candidates for that were dead. But Cromwell was probably next in line, and he reluctantly accepted the role of Lord Protector, and he went on to probably fall out with all of his parliaments, at least probably 3 of them, until 1658. He became Lord Protector in 1653, and in 1658, Fuair Marv, as we say, he died, and of natural causes. And then he had his son inherit the protectorate, a guy called Tumbledown Dick. No connotation involved in that name at all. He just was very bad in terms of running the country, and he was under house arrest actually after some months because he was that bad. But so eventually they negotiated, the army, a guy called General Monk negotiated a return of the Stuarts by asking Charles II, who was, I think, was he about 30 at this stage, to come back to England, and he'd be made king. So in 1660, that happened, and one of Charles's first objectives was to carry out his retribution on the regicides. So that would be the 50-odd men, I think it's about 50, who signed his father's death warrant. So he sent out his men to find these guys. They were all well known. Some of them absconded to Europe. A couple of them absconded to the States. And there's a very good book out by Robert Harris at the moment that follows that particular escapade. Anyway, this is a long way of saying that Cromwell was dead at this stage, but he didn't escape the retribution, because what they did was Charles insisted on the anniversary of his father's death that they dug up Cromwell's body, which they did, and they brought it on a gibbet to Marble Arch, where they hung his body for a couple of days, and then at the end of all of that, they hung, drew, and quartered him. They chopped him up. And as somebody asked a question earlier on about the head, so the head has a life of its own, and the head was put on a railing at Westminster Hall when it was chopped off, and it lasted, would you believe, over 20 years on the railing. Now, this is an exceptionally interesting aspect of all of this because it's Googleable. If anybody has a PC or a phone at the moment and you've got the internet, just put in Cromwell's head spike and you will see a picture of Cromwell's head on the spike. So a storm brew in 1685, I think it was, where the head was blown down and the soldier who was on duty below picked up the head in a panic and thought, oh, this is Cromwell's head, I'll bring it home. So he brought it home. It's what you do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now it was well known to be Cromwell's head, and London was a very small place at that time. So the authorities immediately realized the head was gone. Because it was symbolic up to that point. This is the head of the usurper. Anyway, the guy who had it, decided, oh God, what am I going to do now? And there was a reward out for anyone who had information about Cromwell's head. Anyway, the years passed and he didn't do anything with it until he died, when he bequeathed it to his daughter. His daughter then sold it immediately. And to fast forward through the centuries, it eventually ended up going around to circuses. It was in a museum. It was being handed around at dinner parties by a guy called Samuel Russell, where guests would actually hold the head in their hand and pick off a bit of his ear, a bit of his nose, which they did do. And, this is Cromwell's head. But eventually it came into the possession of the Wilkinson family, who, believe it or not, I'm coming to a kicker, by the way, so just bear with me on this. In the 1930s, decided, well, this is 1930s. If this is Cromwell's head, the spike was still through it. They wanted to analyze it forensically and scientifically with the methods that were available at that time. So it was concluded by two scientists that it was indeed Cromwell's head, because there were blemishes on the skull where Cromwell had warts, and they had compared it to paintings of him and so on. Anyway, this was hot property. Now, what would they do with Cromwell's head? Because a lot of people would like to bash it into pieces. Other people would like to venerate it. That's how Marmite-like Cromwell is. He's such a divisive figure. Anyway, by the time they decided what to do, they were going to bury it, as somebody asked earlier on, and there's absolutely no question about this. They buried the head in the college that he attended, which was Sidney Sussex College in Cambridge. The secret is where exactly it is. Nobody knows exactly where it is, apart from the dean. And the dean of the college hands down the secret to the next dean. I'm just hoping that no dean ever has a heart attack and just goes off very quickly, because the secret would be gone with them. But the kicker is that Cromwell's head was buried in March 1960. Anthony, I was born in March 1960, so there's a reincarnation story there.
Yeah.
If you get me.
You're reincarnated there. We'll make sure nobody, it's great now that we've got more footballs around anyway. You don't have to worry too much.
Yes, that's true.
Christine's I suppose going back to what we were talking about, spiritualism and all that, now if there's ghosts when we pass over, Christine says we won't get the answer until we pass over. Joanne Breen from Seekers of the Afterlife. Hi, Joanne. We're at Whitlow Jail tonight. Sorry, Mr. Showing Whitlow Jail. Give us a shout out tonight. Eleanor says, I don't think it is that ambiguous. It depends on your state of awareness. Technology isn't always necessary. I don't use any and have taught people to read memories through psychometry. Messages are clear there, and also through our clairs if you learn to tune out the background noise. Yes, enough. Like I would more be on the aspect of not being able to actually find the ghost on the equipment that we got, but actually linking.
Can I just chip in there, because I get that absolutely, and I'm not going to challenge what Helena's just said. But I find I'm searching, and there's no question about that. I'm searching now. As I sit here today and 1st of October 2022, I haven't found anything. And in other words, there are some who do and can and will, and are I don't know whether it's a positive mindset or an open mind. I'd like to think I have a cynical brain and I have a logical brain, but I where she says in a factual context that yes, the messages are clear. I don't know that. The people who are, and again, I'm not questioning what she's saying. Obviously, it's genuine for her and genuine for the people with whom she engages, but I don't know that. And you can say anything, if you get me, to justify a particular stance, but it's not it's you know, it's in a, to me, it's just still, that's still ambiguous to me. You know, unless it's like I'm a doubting Thomas. Unless I can put my hands into Christ's, the wounds, I'm not going to believe it. That's my problem. That's why it's ambiguous to me. It's sorry, I do feel passionately.
No. So it's interesting. Like Ellen mentioned psychometry there, and I suppose there's links with psychometry to telepathy as well there. And as we were talking the other night, that like using the side that there is firm in the science world thoughts towards we lost the connection that we could use with our brains, like presentiment, knowing when somebody's staring at us behind us in a bus, that our heart rate goes up and we sweat more. So, and there was tests done that with, I think it's the Stargate test there, you know. But we do, so I suppose it might come back to telepathy, psychometry there, that we know in between ourselves that we connect and getting the right answers there between each other. Well, or we can we know from what a person is distant to transference thought, you know.
Well, that's sorry, Anthony. That's I like exactly what you said. I've never heard of psychometry. I don't know what it is. I must Google it afterwards. I don't understand it. But you know, there are some you know, certainties that one must accept to, for instance, believe that the other dimension, and there were others there in that dimension, whatever it is, the afterlife, you know. The other world, and that certainty is this, that when the point of death comes, that there is a possibility that it can't be consciousness, because, you know, I'm not a scientist by any manner of means, but I understand, and this is where I'm going to get a bit lost, but I understand the consciousness is gone. I understand that rigor mortis sets in. My understanding then is, you know, that the only possible explanation that could come from existence in some shape or form post death would be maybe connected with energy. You know, stone has energy, my laptop has energy, whatever, you know, and that's, again, I don't have the capacity. This is the problem. And so many people have different levels of intelligence, and I'm, you know, way down on the scale. I don't have the capacity. No, but you know, I mean, but you get me. Like, it's not something that. Why is it so difficult to understand that? Because my logical brain tells me you're dead, and there's no possibility that there's anything after that where you could exist, and that's where my point of reference is. So when people say, you know, they've connected with the afterworld and thinking, well, my belief is that until I you know, have some sort of an epiphany or something happens, but I think right now I'm going to go through my whole life not having that, you know, but I want to communicate. Like, my father died, you know, now he's dead a long time. He died in 1999, and there were so many people throughout history who have said, and he told me, you know, that he'd come back and he'd talk to me, he'd tell me what it's like. Look, I know that's naive. I get all that. Apparently, that's impossible. Whoever this guy is sitting on a cloud up there, he goes, no, you can't do that. I'm so sorry. You know, okay, I'm being facetious, but you get me. Sorry.
Yeah, there could be other ways that, you know, we just don't know. I suppose we don't know, but we can, you know, it's something we're trying to, like, as astronomers, trying to explore more, I suppose. And most of the people watching tonight, their paranormal teams, they're doing the same as well there, you know. And it's good. Haunted Air, how you doing? Hi AJ, hi Tom there. I think that's Shane. How you doing, I'll enjoy, guys. I think they're on about the topics there. Like, oh my God, Jenny Sullivan from MLR Paranormal Researchers at Whitlow Jail tonight. I hope you're keeping warm anyway, Jenny. I think Ellen's explaining about the psychometry there. I do psychic detection, member of the London of Psychic Studies. I've obtained that way and have been able to later verify historical through traditional research, like in Loftus Hall or some police cases. So that is what I meant there. Psychometry is also used by the UK psychic detective Tony Stockwell, who I trained with, might have heard of him, reading energy and interprets it as memories. haunted area as well. When I
that all sounds. Sorry, Anthony, before
Yeah,
you keep going, but that all sounds very academic and believable, and I get that. And there are, like I said before, there are, much more clever people than me in involved in this. But I suppose my point is, it's like so many other things that why, why is this not generally understandable by the common person? People who should be embracing all of this. Why is it the preserve of those who find that path in life? Do you get me? Like,
yeah,
like, because this is just too significant to to leave aside in your life. People we're sailing through this world, and if we don't get this aspect right, because I've given up believing in God. I don't believe there's a God. Why would I? Because it's it's an illogical concept. So, but all of these things are linked, if you know what I mean, because God is a supernatural being, allegedly, well, definitely. But so if I can't accept that, there are lots of things I can't accept. So, again, to me, the ambiguity dominates, and that's a frustration.
The haunted area says when we captured an EVP, which is electronic voice phenomenon, the voice comes through like they are flying by, like a wind force is pushing them by the recorder. Not on all, but some. Hard to explain.
See, I read that just there, and I understand that, and I've been the subject, because when having worked in a castle, people come all the time and they want to do investigations, and I've walked around the castle with people who say, "Oh, did you hear that? Did you see that? Did that door open on its own?" And so on. I go, "No, it didn't." But you can, and I watch this stuff in the cold light of day. Look, I'm passionate about it because I really want to embrace it, and it's just so frustrating to me that because I can't. And you talk about EVPs or whatever it is. Again, I'm going back to the source. I'm going back and saying, how is such a thing possible? I mean, I'm asking, why don't I ask you? I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but how do you interpret, the passing of the live person to death and a potential other world?
I suppose it's a metaphysical question there, is it? Our brains, are they physically able to be non-physical and actually communicate our conscious mind back to ourselves using the method of telepathy? I don't know. I'm still exploring myself.
I get it, but scientists will tell you that that's not possible. And because your consciousness is gone. And again, like I say, I'm struggling to articulate detail, and maybe somebody could tell me, because that's the point for me. Yeah, look, there could be loads of contact being made by any amount of individuals. I often think of that Christmas Carol, the Jim Carrey one, where you see all these guys, the story of Scrooge, going around with chains because they were bad in this life, Jacob Marley and so on, and you think, oh my God, what a horrible, awful thing to happen and place to be. And you think, wow, look, it's out of his imagination and it's Disney, but that's how we're conditioned? Are we conditioned because of Hollywood, or
true, Shakespeare, those Dickens, and the chains from Dickens probably back to what I think is the oldest ghost story, going back to Greek. Get the fella now, his name was Chains, But as you said there, I suppose, like Natalie says there, when there's spirit about, I usually get change in the ear sound wave. So, changes in the ear. So, this is why I suppose we're supposed to be more, our brain reacts better to sound than how it does to sight. So going back to thousands, millennium, when we were, I forget how long we've been on that, but when we were, the Neanderthal, they were so used to the sounds more quicker. The brain interprets sounds much quicker, and that's interesting thought there. Like, I suppose, like a bat, I suppose infrasound, echolocation. No, sorry, ultrasound. That's ultrasound.
Oh, ultrasound. Okay,
Sorry, ultrasound, echolocation. But that's between 2,000, 6,000, 200, between 6,000 and 200,000 hertz. So, but you'd be able to interpret it. That's interesting, and that's well. Some people can as well, But going back to
Sorry, no, go. You take me back.
all the
Put me
questions
back
are
on
coming.
track.
Just put you back on track. We're going back to Cromwell again.
Who?
Okay,
I'm not familiar with that name.
What's this picture there? Now we're talking about, I suppose, what you're touching upon is interesting because we're on about who has the right to be seen by God and all that, you know. And I suppose the question I want to put forward to you there is that more royalists lost their lives during the war, the English Civil War, and I think the Three Kingdoms there, you know. What are royalist ghosts like? And what your recollection or thoughts about royalist ghosts? Are they more favoured than, say, parliamentarian ghosts, roundhead ghosts?
Could you just? Sorry, I know you did mention
I
this.
know.
So when you say more favoured, do you
More
mean
favoured, as in the more good omens to see a royalist ghost. Less like there's more fear and trepidation seeing a roundhead ghost. As some of the stories are, like, you know, like as you mentioned, like with supposedly the Roundheads then attacking nuns and priests and all that, you know.
Yes,
Is royalist ghosts, are they seen a lot? Or
I get you. Yeah. I may struggle slightly with this question, and I'll tell you why. Because well, firstly, yes, there would be more deaths on the royalist side. So ergo, there would be more royalist ghosts. There are obviously lots of stories, as you can imagine, between between the UK and Ireland of different battlefields and ghosts of for armies looking for the battle still, and officers looking for a battle that's not there anymore. And people can hear things on battlefields like Edge Hill and Naseby and Marston Moor and all of those places. I don't know. I know what you're saying, and I know what you want me to say, but I don't know that I can, because I genuinely don't know. I'm going to have to sidestep this one. It's not something that I would. I mean, I do know, and you may. I do know. For instance, that the stories about Cromwellian soldiers in Ireland who would have committed. I'm going to use the word atrocities because I can't think of anything else to defenders of Irish towns, that they would have been obviously plagued, with spirits and so on, and they would be seen. I'm going to struggle with that because I genuinely don't know actually.
No, it's just an interest. I just thought that because there'd be more royalist ghosts, there'd be more royalist deaths, there'd be more royalist ghosts.
Totally get it.
Even over in Ireland, if there was that many massacres as well, there'd be more. Well, we'll touch upon Cromwell and ghosts of Ireland there shortly, or just the stories of the people related to them there as well. I suppose we'll go on to and Colin Cromwell. His house is supposed to be haunted. Is that?
Yeah. We mentioned that's true. Yeah, we mentioned. The house in Ely, and there was an investigation done there in the 2000s, I think, by the local Cambridge Paranormal Society, and I believe that again, this is all Googleable, and the lady who conducted the investigation made contact with Cromwell, and the conversation wasn't really revealed, but apparently he spoke very positively. Again, some of the things that people have misnomers about is the fact that why are all it's probably Hollywood again. Why are all ghosts out to scare us, or why is it always a negative connotation? So in terms of Cromwell's house, there are pukas. You're familiar with the expression puka? Yeah. So there are rascal rogue ghosts in the house. Allegedly, where the staff's laces are constantly opened, and too much so for it to be a coincidence. They only have their laces tied and they're up, and they're open again. So this would be the ghosts, the pukas would be, that they're not going to make Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween putting in pukas. Mike Myers.
But it's interesting, sometimes the smallest stuff is more interesting than all like Hollywood does, or what we see on TV these days,
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some of the stories that come down to us. I know we may have mentioned it earlier on as well, like at Malahide Castle, which isn't too far away from me. The house was the Talbot's house, but in the exchange of land transformation. Miles Corbett, guy who was a Cromwellian.
We'll probably touch upon that now shortly with the.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you mentioned that earlier. Yeah, is that okay to?
Yeah, I'll just sidetrack that there for a moment. I'll just go to these last questions,
Yes.
last statements there. Because most of the people are not tuned into using their intuition, they override it with the thinking brain, the logos. I work with the subconsciousness, and it's through altered stage trance dreams when our active brain is not working that we can experience these things.
So that's amazing, Helena. Like, you know, I'd like to. You see, this is one of the things that should this not be mainstream? Should this not be, you know, like using your intuition? That's a very interesting point, you know. But you know how, and I know that you know there are some people like obviously Helena, who can harness that and can discover that and interpret that. But the ordinary guy on the street, girl, person, whatever it is, you know, would have to know that they need to harness their intuition. I suppose what I'm basically saying is that why is it always, you know, difficult to find that platform where you can understand stuff, you know?
Yeah. So just like J.B. Ryan did a study there on a particular psychic there, and he did 3,000 tests with him on the Zenith cards. I think the first trial, the first few trials, he was excellent. He was beyond the 50% chance there, and then it got too boring after that.
Yeah,
you know. So as opposed, as you mentioned that how does the person tune into that, and how does the person who's tuned not tune into that as often to be more significantly? You know.
But it's the tuned and the untuned, if you know what I mean. Like I have long since accepted that I'm going to be an untuner. You know, I'm not tuned in, or I'm certainly not tuned in. You know, but there are other. Do you mind if I just ask you just what time do we have left? Because I don't want to dominate. Because I'm about to just have a conversation about psychics. Is that possible?
Well, yeah,
are we okay?
Go ahead. I'll just go through these last few statements.
Yes.
There. I think Alice says I think that's being skeptic is a positive thing because it means you are open to experiencing it.
Personally, I am, Alice. Yeah.
And Christine says you have to be an open mind and experience stuff that I can't explain, and I'm not crazy.
So can I just so just on Christine's point, I am sorry, Anthony, I don't normally dominate conversations, but this I'm just so excited.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm so excited about this, you know, because I said to you before, I love it, you know. So yes, Christine, I completely understand what you're saying, and now I haven't personally experienced stuff because to me there's always a logical explanation, but where there isn't. And where, you know, if I'm sitting in a room, for instance, and there's a big loud noise, you can't explain it, I will always go, it's got to be the wind. It's got to be, you know, some sort of structural fault or whatever it is. I will never default to a supernatural explanation. And the reason I won't do that is because in my mind, why would I? There has to be a logical explanation. And if something can't be explained by a logical explanation or science or whatever it is can't explain it, well, you know, if it happens in 100 years' time, maybe science can explain it, if you get me. So unless, you know, I will, and I understand, and I love when people say that I experience stuff that I can't explain. But because of the conditioning that most people go through in this world, because of all the movies we see, because, as you mentioned, all the books that have been out there for centuries, because of, you know, our thought process, we will immediately think, you know, well, that's a ghost, and leave it at that, you know. And you know, I can't explain, you know, but to me, I would never default to the supernatural explanation. Always the logical one. I'm sorry.
Yes, and then when there's all else is failed, then it's unexplained. You know?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. And it is unexplained.
Yeah.
Correct. And I see stuff all the time. Do you mind if I just segue?
Yeah,
because there isn't a segue that's obvious here. But I watched recently Darren Brown. Now, you know, Darren Brown to me is an absolute genius. I love Darren Brown, and I love the kind of things. You're familiar with the name? Obviously, that's not a stupid question.
Oh yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, and what he was doing in this particular clip that I watched was he went to the States. Now I'm paraphrasing and I may get some things wrong, but I'm trying to keep to as genuine as I can because it's a couple of months ago since I watched it. But he explained to the audience, it's on YouTube, and he explained to the audience that what he was about to do was he was about to go into a room, an auditorium in the States where he wasn't well known, and he was trying to convince, I don't know whether it was a producer or another psychic, and he was trying to convince them over there that he had the gift or whatever. That's probably a very bad way of describing it. Anyway, but he explained to the audience beforehand, he said, look, I'm going to go in here. I'm not going to be in touch with any other dimension. I'm not going to be in touch with any relatives. I am, he was absolute categoric. I will not be doing this. What I will be doing is I will be reading people. Again, paraphrasing. It's whatever skills that this man has, he was going to do this. Anyway, long story longer, he goes into the room, and you can probably tell what's going to happen now. He has certain individuals in that room completely in tears because he says things like so outlandishly ridiculous, like, somebody in the room has a relation called Doris who's died. The lady who has Doris who's died goes, yeah, that's possibly my Doris. Then he says something incredibly specific, like she loved rabbits. She was into motorcycles. She loved blackjack. And she goes, oh my God, this is Doris. Now, they're so outlandishly ridiculous. From what he told me, from what he told us at the beginning of the show, I'm going, how the hell does he know that? But he does. And he didn't tell these people that he was, not in touch with their relations until the show was over, because he had to get their permission to air the show. So they, again, I can't really remember their reactions, but they were kind of going, oh my God, but someone that didn't believe it because they thought, yes, well, he's saying that, but he obviously was. But I suppose his point was that this is what charlatans can do. These televangelists who have the earpiece and, you fill out a form before you go in. And, and my point about all of this essentially is that people search for, yearn for comfort in knowing that their loved ones who have passed on are okay. And that's huge. I would love to know that my dad was okay. For right now, I believe he's dead and that's it. He's not coming back. It's not anywhere. It's over. He's dust. But I'd love, for somebody to tell me that when I do die, that I will meet him again, and whatever capacity that is, that nobody can explain, but it's always ambiguous. Anyway, sorry, I'm ranting now, but you see,
no, I understand.
Yeah, and like, what is that? Because there are so many charlatans out there, and I, when I hear the word psychic, and I absolutely genuinely apologize to anybody out there who is, in that area. And spend time in it and connect with the other world. I just believe that it's open to what's the word I'm looking for? People skullduggery.
Yeah, so it's open to that because it's not nobody abuse, really knows. Nobody knows in what this kind of field, what is true or not at the moment there, whether what we're gathering through equipment or whatever is capable of knowing what, if there is. So we're only going on by what we know on social media. And at the moment, it's changing now it's going from people reading books to watching TikTok. So I mean, people for giving information may not be up to the standard of giving proper information, Even myself, I wouldn't class myself as giving proper information, but on a subject like this, nobody really knows. So, but if somebody is there to tell you this is this and this is that, it's going back to King Charles I and Cromwell again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a lot of sorry, go ahead. No, it's your show. Keep going.
No, sorry. Bridget from Seekers of the Afterlife says, "Hey guys, just at Wicklow Jail."
What is this with Wicklow Jail? I know the manager down there. Her name is Emer, and is Wicklow Jail? Are people staying there?
No, it's good. There's doing a paranormal night, and there's a good few people that tune in there tonight. So they're watching themselves from the jail there.
Okay.
Now you probably caused a load of activity in the jail.
I hope so. You're welcome, guys. No problem.
Joanne from the same team, Singers of the Afterlife, says, Tom, what battlefield in particular would you love to visit and investigate for paranormal activity? Now, I suppose if it's not that, but if you had a chance as well, I suppose if you don't believe in paranormal activity, which battles place would you go back to if you had a chance?
No, it's a fair point. It's a fair point. You know, oddly, as I sit here at this very moment, I am actually on a battlefield, and it's the Drogheda battlefield. I am literally where the breach was made in the walls, just here. It's literally about 20 yards away from me. So that's one of them. I think Edge Hill. There's a lot of stories about Edge Hill in terms of ghosts and stuff. So that would be an interesting one. I haven't been to Edge Hill. I've been to Naseby, been to Marston Moor, but I haven't been to Edge Hill. That was the first really significant battle of the English Civil War. The Cromwell actually didn't really feature too much in. He only arrived reasonably late. But yeah, I think I'd like to go to Edge Hill because it's there is a story, by the way, which is, you know, all these Cromwell stories are interesting. Sorry, are we on to Wicklow Jail there? Is that what that is?
No, that's not Wicklow Jail. That's a competition there.
I beg your pardon.
Go ahead.
Okay, very subtly done. So just like when the Civil War was ending, there was one final battle, and that was the Battle of Worcester. Now, the Battle of Worcester, there's a story, and it's come down to us that before the battle, Cromwell it came down to us through one of his generals who apparently, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Anyway, they went into the woods, which was quite close to the battlefield, and Cromwell met with an old man. And this old man negotiated with Cromwell. So let's just assume this guy is just an old man. But anyway, he had some sort of supernatural powers, and he said to Cromwell, okay, I will give you, if you, Cromwell said, I want to win this battle, and I want to have 21 years of life after this, oddly. So the guy said, no, I'm only giving you 7. And Cromwell said, no, I won't take 21, I'll take 14. Don't know why they were in multiples of 7. Anyway, Cromwell eventually agreed, oh, damn, he's okay, I'll take 7. And this was in 1651. And so what's the guy's name? Anyway, the officer witnessed this. So they knew, and Cromwell turned around to me and said, the battle is now ours. So he knew that he had given up some long life, but he was only going to get 7 years. And then in 1658, when he did die, a couple of nights before his actual death, there was the biggest storm England had ever seen. You talk about Florida and Hurricane Ian or whatever it is, nothing compared to what this was. Trees, oaks were uprooted like saplings. It was just horrendous. Roofs were lifted off. And this was allegedly the devil, heralding coming for Cromwell's soul or whatever that is. I don't know what a soul is. But anyway, it's just a lovely story that's linked with the Battle of Worcester and devils and demons and so on. And this is what people believed. And this officer who went into the woods categorically believed that this happened,
Yeah, it's interesting, because it's still like the big wind was in the 1820s in Ireland.
Yeah, that's right, 1839,
So just as recent as that there. We're going to talk about quickly on Cromwell and Ghosts of Ireland. So we're going to talk about Malahide there as well, Natalie there, and Shana, if you're still there. Miles Colbert folders for Malahide. We're going to be talking about that shortly there, but competition time. And if you're there, Alice, I need you to type in one of these four words. I need you to type tour guide or tourist or janitor, stroke cleaner, or reporter. So you have to on the lookout for the monk. There's been a monk reported to be seen at a cathedral in England, and you can either pick either the tour guide, tourist, cleaner, janitor, or reporter.
Tour guide, she's gone for.
Tour guide. Is it tour guide? Tour guide.
Yes,
Which one? Which one would you go for, Tom?
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Firstly, I'm just curious why you said there was a monk seen in a cathedral. Is that not normal? I presume he was.
report.
Yeah, I'd go for. Did you say report? Yeah,
Yeah, report. No, reports of it. So is it,
yeah.
what do you reckon?
Yeah, report. Let's go with that.
The reporter? You go with the
Reporter.
reporter.
Sorry. Yeah.
Reporter. Okay. We'll check out at the end of the show. So next we're going to talk about Cromwellian ghosts of the island. And there's a few stories there. Going back to Malahide and Miles Corbett, is it?
Yes, I love the way you have a spine running through the show and nothing will make you deviate from that. This is really good. This is the sign, folks, of somebody who knows what he's doing.
Sort of.
Yeah, apart from yours truly here who hasn't a clue. So Miles Corbett was. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
For some reason I thought the sound went. So anyway, he was a Cromwellian soldier who inherited, or at least procured Malahide Castle during the 1650s, and he would have caused Catholics. I think he closed down the chapel. He did something to the chapel that was on site, because it was a Catholic chapel, and he desecrated it in some way. This was iconoclasm, or iconoclastic. Probably said that very wrong. Activities were very prevalent in these days. A lot of stories about Cromwellian soldiers stabling their horses in cathedrals and churches and so on. But anyway, so Miles Corbett did this, and this is not something that you do to Catholics. So when he was eventually hung, because obviously when King Charles came back, the Cromwellians didn't win anything, and he was hung, drawn, and quartered. So this is the kind of thing they used to do in those days. And when people go to see Malahide Castle, because of the fact that he was split in four, people are convinced that they see a man, the shape of a man, and he immediately falls into four pieces. And people have sworn by this that they've seen Miles Corbett in Malahide Castle, and it's a well-known ghost story that's associated with Malahide. So I've been to Malahide, and I just haven't seen Miles.
It's interesting. The word Miles in Latin means soldier.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's very. I didn't know that.
Which is interesting there.
Yes.
I was going to say, can you tell us then about who was Charles Coote?
Oh yeah. So in Roscommon, there's a Castle Coote there. Now, one of the things about there, would you believe there were actually two Charles Cootes? There was the father and the son, and the son was the real bad guy. And there's an awful lot of again, there's the documented evidence that he was in fact, he was worse than Cromwell, absolutely categorically. He killed men, women, and children, and Catholics, back in the day. So inevitably there would be stories about him, and I'm just going to refer to my notes. And so there's a tower in Castle Coote where Charles himself is allegedly stuck and can't get out, and people have seen him there calling for help and trying to get out. But it's again, it's the source of all of this is that when you were bad to Catholics and you were a Cromwellian soldier, your ghost is going to have an awful lot of trouble. So he's going to be there for eternity, whatever that is, in Castle Coote and Roscommon. There are lots of, you guys, I mean, you must know, Anthony, having been around here for some time, a lot of castles in Ireland would claim to be the most haunted, castle in the world, or castle in Europe, and so on, because there's any amount of stories about to me, the older a building is, and I inhabit a castle most of my week, the more stories can be told about it, the more it reeks of history, the more people who have been in it. Like there's one of the rooms in the castle that I work in, there's a 6-year-old child called Hercules Taylor. The Taylor family used to own it. He haunts that room, and this is something that I've seen written down in the diaries of the Taylor family who used to live in the castle, and they say this, so whether it's true, whether it isn't true. It's terribly interesting to know that people, completely believe this.
It's interesting. Like, I know it's true. Like, there's like in King's John's Castle, in Limerick, there's
Yes.
accounts of a gentleman, which I'm just going to show a picture of somebody like this with a breastplate, Cromwell style kind of clothing there. Well, that's what was supposedly there, wearing a head kind of attire similar to what this was there. It was in the reports of newspapers there,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that helmet is a lobster pot. So there would be a plate down the back to protect your neck if somebody was going for your neck, and there's a cage obviously around the front to protect your face. They would have worn buff coats. That's probably a buff coat that you can see there. So that would be made from leather. And obviously the Puritan collars as well, which are exaggerated white. Cromwell is usually always depicted. That's not Cromwell himself, but that's a roundhead soldier. And then the knee-high boots, well, they're thigh-high really there. He's a bit kinky, that particular one.
Extra leather gun spare. So.
Well, a certain light couple of drinks, who knows? But anyway, yeah, these are the kind of things. So they had to differentiate themselves. I mean, at the beginning of the war, the Roundhead, the Roundheads are called Roundheads because a lot of them at the beginning of the war shaved their heads, and they had like skinheads. When skinheads were around in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and the Cavaliers, then the Royalists. Were kind of well known to have this, Prince Rupert long flowing locks. In actual fact, they're probably again just legends that came from the time. And I there's no question that parliamentarians also had long hair. Probably didn't go to the barbers as often as they might have had.
True, yeah. God, you say, oh God, I have to cut my hair or I have to grow it.
Yeah, I'll grow it. Well, some people have hair, which is really impressive.
From all today, my daughter woke up around 4 a.m. She said a man with a white shirt and a stable wound, which he showed her. He stood in her bedroom doorway. Then he showed her his wound and went. We had just done an investigation that night.
Wow.
Stab. I think it must have been a stab wound.
Yeah.
But also, before I go on to two interesting questions, there's a Scarlet Lady as well in Drogheda. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's Drogheda is, there's no question that deaths took place here in 1649 when Cromwell came to town. And there's different legends about different parts of the town. So we have a Scarlet Street here in the town. Now, in terms of logicality and all those kind of things, Scarlet Street was actually outside the town walls at that time. So it's unlikely, and there's no real documentation that anybody was killed in the area. But still, people actually firmly believe, yes, that there's a Scarlet Lady who appears looking for her children. And, this is, again, one of the things that I would, I'll be able to tell the story, but I'm not so sure that I would believe the story, because my investigations have revealed that no children were actually killed. But that doesn't dissuade or discourage people from saying, and people have seen the Scarlet Lady. Now, just on that particular point, there was also a Scarlet Lane in Dublin around this time, and I found that there were also Scarlet Lanes in different cities in the UK around that time, and I think it was more to do with dyeing, D-Y-E-I-N-G, as opposed to D-Y-I-N-G, if you get me, like it's to do with dyeing clothes.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Alice says science through asking questions. Christine says it's not the wind. I get woken up by a knock during the night, and I'm the only person in the house, or I've woken or on my bedroom door during the night, and the only person in the house, or have
smell of bad breath in the air.
Smell of bad breath in the air. It's interesting. Now there could be environmental things as well, we just don't know that.
Well, I wouldn't. You see, my situation very clearly, Anthony, is these, and Christine is obviously one of them. These are genuine experiences. This is not somebody who's just making this up, and I totally get that. And I suppose my point is that that, like I've said before, I'd love to be one of those people. I'd love to be Christine. I'd love to, and I challenge, and even now I'll make a challenge to any bloody ghosts out there listening to me. Come haunt me. Chuckle in my ear, cast your bad breath all over my nose. I don't know whether that sounds crazy to you people or whatever, and I don't mean you people. Sorry, I mean to anybody out there.
I'm just next door to you there.
Yeah, but I want, I'm imploring the other world to get in touch with me, and then I will understand it. But I've done this before, and nothing ever happens. And like I say, it's probably it's the need is too great for me. I probably got to be a bit more casual. Maybe they might sneak up and surprise me on a day that I'm not expecting it. But like Christine's had that experience, and others listening to this and watching this would have had significant experiences too. People aren't lying. This is not something that they're making up. This is something that they absolutely genuinely experience or believe they experience, or whatever it is, for whatever reason. But I just wish that I could. Sorry, I'm just going to turn the tables right back at you. So have you had paranormal, supernatural experiences yourself personally?
On a physical note, probably recently was a tap on the shoulder blade.
Okay.
Not a muscle on the shoulder blade. It was like a prod.
Yeah.
There was nobody else around, which is interesting because I know my own body there and I know my own bones.
So can I ask you, where were you at that point in time?
I was it was a walk around before an investigation. There was nobody else around me there. And it was a specific 2-finger prod.
Okay.
On top of the shoulder. Yeah. And I know it wasn't any clothing changing because it was only wearing a jacket, but it wasn't. It could be explainable. There was a jacket there. But apart from that, I go probably more into the spiritual side, connected more with divination, which is getting information, obtaining information through the occult or using the psychic abilities, as they say there, But, using a talking board, mirror scrying, dowsing, those sorts of experiments, using different cards and all that. But as you said, like Christine, it's great what Christine says, because back in years, people have been put into psychiatric wards for even talking about this situation there. So it's great that there's people that have, and even those people there have had genuine experiences and been backed up by other people that have had those similar experiences post that event, So
of course, but people have been given electric shock treatment and all that kind of nonsense too. But like if something or someone or some entity or whatever it is tapped you on the shoulder, like you see, for me, and if that happened to me, and I'm not suggesting because this is something that you're interested in as well. I would love to know. I'd like to try and interpret that. I'm thinking, okay, does somebody want to how? Because if that's the only thing that I would have experienced, let's say it was me, I'd be kind of going, okay, is it my dad? Is it somebody trying to tell me something? What's the interpretation I can come to? It's far too general in action to be specific. So is it a show? What am I going to get a pain in my shoulder later on in my life? Do you get me?
Well,
I would want to know
the meaning. What was the meaning of that there? Yeah.
Yes.
Who did that?
Yes. Or what did that?
What did that? And what could have been? And why was it in that area? Why wasn't it earlier on or later on as well? Why was it at that stage before we did the investigation? We were just walking around.
Very good. Yeah. So, I mean, if something was going to touch any part of my body, I'd much prefer it wasn't my shoulder. But let's not go there. Because
I wish you touched me on the head, maybe more hair.
I wasn't thinking of the head. But anyway, let's keep it as a family show.
It was Walter Hussey who followed us home. Oopsie. That's what I think it was Natalie was saying there from Malahide. Walter Hussey. Christine says,
"Oh, okay. Yeah,
thanks. It was a great show, but I work for 7:30 in the morning, so I'm going to have to say good night. No worries, Christine. And thank you.
Good night, Christine. I hope nobody's chuckling in your ear this evening, or you hear any knocks, or there's bad breath in the room.
No. Well, I might do the bad breath. Sorry. I like jogging. David, all the way from Scotland, says, love this episode. Anthony Kerry, one of the best yet. Tom's a great guest.
Wow. Perfect. Thank you, David. That's a very interesting second name you have. I don't know if that's...
he's on the boat, David. He is. Cat's on the yacht. He's got loads of cats on his yacht. I don't know how they don't get seasick.
And is his actual name Healer?
Yeah. He's a genuine person there. I was going to say, so a couple more questions before now, and this is just stepping away from GhostÉire, would you imagine, say somebody, say through a Cromwellian, say if it was a GhostÉire or a Cromwellian person just came back alive and he saw the way what Ireland ran today, what would they think?
Such a good question. So, well, there are quite an amount of levels to that come to mind when you talk about that. Firstly, I've often thought of Cromwell himself, and I often thought of how devastated he would be to, for instance, have witnessed the Troubles. When they kicked off in 69, 70, and the horrendous atrocities that were committed, on both sides during that time. So it's difficult to, and I don't know if this is the kind of answer that you're looking for, but when you consider what the English, and I to me again, it's all the past. It's all back in time when we can't judge. It took over Ireland or subjugated Ireland, whatever it was. We were always going to be a landing point for them potentially, anyway. In terms of European armies, it kind of almost happened a few times, but so we were always going to be in trouble. But at this moment in time, as we sit here today, there was, I believe, a convention in Dublin that, with the theme of which was Irish unity.
That
was today. Now, the Unionists chose not to attend, which is fine, obviously. But the general consensus of opinion there was that there will be a forum or discussions had in the future where all sides will be invited to and engage in, and all sides will be sensitive to the other sides. So I have often thought about what somebody Cromwellian or Cromwell himself might have thought about what they actually did here. I mean, what they did was they basically created a Protestant ascendancy from the wars, because Catholics became, second citizens, essentially, back in the day. And of course, it wasn't always divided by religion. Basically, royalists became second citizens until Charles came back and put his seat on the throne. Interestingly, when Cromwell was protector, an awful lot of Irish people petitioned him for their land back, because he made certain deals when he was in Ireland, but others who came after him subsequently reneged on those deals. But in every case, Cromwell displayed leniency towards the Irish. It got to the point where Parliament actually wouldn't let Oliver Cromwell see any more Irish people, because he just kept giving them the land back. So if they were to look back, I'd be inclined to think that, well, I don't know, really, but Ireland, we've been, the famine, we've been through so many horrendous centuries of oppression from the English. You'd like to think that somebody who was involved in that back in the day would have some sort of acknowledgement of the damage that was done, because on these quirks of history, nations have been founded, and we created from the 1916 Rising, when all of that happened, and we secured our freedom and our republic. That could have happened from any rebellion in the past, like the Fenians in the 1800s and so on. But eventually it did happen. So, I'd be inclined to, I certainly think that Cromwell would be mortified at what happened and would never have anticipated any of that. I don't know, Anthony, if that's the line you wanted me to take, or if that's the direction you wanted me to go.
It's a fair point. I suppose we just don't know if we knew things that we did our own lives. Would we turn the clock back there? Would we be happy, and change some
Hindsight,
things?
man, hindsight is a
No.
terrific view if you can get that, But just so for the record, I'm very pro United Ireland. That's not no disrespect meant to anybody whatsoever. I just don't get it. We were an island of saints and scholars, and now we're very divided. And I think partition. This is a very controversial statement, but I think partition should end, and that the Ireland should be given back to the Irish.
Yeah, it's great. And apart from that, then I suppose at the moment, I suppose people aren't talking about it there, but it's back down, which you mentioned there before. It's going back to religion again. Whether we're going to have a united Ireland and but people haven't talked about. I don't know. It probably will come in the time about the HSE, about having to extra councils, extra money being able to resource into somewhere. HSE being more under burden.
That's right.
And it'd be great if it touched upon and maybe the repercussions down here, in the south, or if it did from unionists, like it had with England during the 70s and 80s bombings, it might come back down here. So it's hard to know what's going to happen. And it'd be great for a discussion. I hope everything comes out, but hopefully it just doesn't come to religion.
No, but you see, I know we're probably tight for time.
Way off the subject.
Well, just because again, I've got very strong feelings on this. And my feelings are that there's so many like Scandinavian countries, for instance, at this moment in time that are becoming atheistic, and with good reason. So, and the first post-Christian society will probably be the UK, because they don't really believe en masse over there anymore. So my point is that the north of Ireland is very stuck, and we look at it bemusedly almost down here, very stuck in the past, and it's always to the fore. It's always to do about traditions of the past. Oh my God, the future is where it's at. So absolutely keep your traditions. And again, no disrespect to anybody, but it's to me there's an entrenchment, and the religious. Like for instance, I'm just going to throw it out there. Let's imagine for a second that there is no God. Religion doesn't become a thing anymore. And I realize exactly what you've said, that the religious aspect of all of this is very convoluted and very complicated. But in 2,000 years' time, when we look back at this time as the incredibly naive time, we all believed in some guy on a cloud. I believe, okay, it won't take that long to have a united Ireland, but my point is that it's fanciful. Religion is not a real thing. It's a belief. It's not a fact. So while you have to respect people's religion, and I totally get that, I think it should take a significant backseat in these discussions. It won't, but my God, I just wish I could come back in 1,000 years to see what the world would be like without religion, because that's the way it's heading, man.
And the last question there, because this is something to do with like battle reenactments. Now, where I used to live in England, there was the Battle of Nantwich, and they had the Cavaliers against the Roundheads every January.
Yes.
Mid-January, they had reenactments of the battles there. They obviously, because of the way Cromwell was portrayed there, they don't have them here in Ireland. Is there a chance that maybe another 500, 1,000 years they'll have a battle reenactment between the Roundheads and the Royalists?
I think it's a very strange. It's a very good question, and from my perspective, and the role that I currently have given myself in this world is to try and alter Irish perceptions of Cromwell. And that's going to take a long time, but when I shift off this mortal coil, or whatever the expression is, I'd love somebody to take up the mantle. Nobody else is, and it's not. This is this will take a long time to filter through to mainstream. So I think in a context, there is the Sealed Knot and there's the Civil War Society, and there are other organizations in the UK that do have these reenactments. Over here, of course, we do the Viking reenactments. We do, other,
You don't even do Brian. I don't know Brian Baru.
Brian Baru, that doesn't
yeah.
happen either. Yeah,
No,
it seems to be a cultural thing to me that it's not really. We don't tap into that. I suspect that if there was a reenactment of any of the battles that Cromwell was in, that there would be an immediate outcry by various, disparate groups, and it will take a long time for the message to get through. But if I can just emphasize before you shut me up, that this is not rocket science. This is not something that the preserve of historians should be telling us because only they understand it. Oh my God, this is clear as day. I've got a YouTube clip up there if anybody's interested in looking at it. Drogheda, Cromwell, and the massacre nonsense, and I outline my case against for Cromwell, and it's incontrovertible. You can't argue with it, So anyway, if I'm saying nothing else tonight, I'm saying that I'm right, everybody else is wrong. Thank you very much.
That's it. That's it. That's what we should start with.
I think so. Yeah, it would have been a quick show, but
Finally, after 2 hours, I'm joking the message. Haunted there, I think it's Natalie Fowler Feeling. She says, you know how we say, gosh, if Cromwell came back and seen what's going on now, well, Spur, I reckon, have been watching since the day they died, so they have evolved with us. Possibly, maybe, who knows?
Good point. Good point. Yeah,
they might evolve with us, and true. If it's
absolutely, they're watching. They're, this is the thing. Yeah, no question. I just wish that somebody would, or one of them would contact me. What a amazing crack we'd have if I could talk to a Cromwellian soldier before I die. That'd be amazing. Find out the real deal.
I know, that'd be great there. So competition time. Before I come back to you, Tom, and how people can contact you or get the books as well there. This is one of the answers, the correct answers. So this is in the cathedral. You're looking for.
When I've been working nights cleaning, I've seen a hooded figure by the cloister.
So that was one of the answers. That was me with a cold.
Yeah, I see what you mean now about a monk. By the way, the scene. I get it now.
So that was one of the right answers. That was the janitor there. This is the other right answer. See if you're right there, Tom or Alice. Here it is.
I came here to do a report on a famous poet buried here, and I spotted a man in a cloak singing Gregorian chant by the sacristy.
That was me there holding my breath.
I love that. Was very good.
Yeah, I'm a great actor.
Yeah, falsetto. Yeah.
I could do loads of voices there. I could even talk like this without even actually saying either my lips. Okay, that's actually bad.
I think I said reporter, did I?
You were right, Tom. You're right. I put you down. You're in the Halloween mega draw where you can win loads of books about ghosts.
Oh wow!
How to contact.
Lovely. Could change my life.
Sorry now there, Alice. There was the two right answers were the cleaner or stroke janitor or the reporter. Sorry about that now. Eleanor wants to say that she's inviting everyone to an online talk on November the 1st on the on death and the art of dying. Happy for
Now, isn't that a
everyone
lovely
to contact.
expression? Sorry,
Yeah.
that's it, isn't it? The art of dying. Happy for everyone's contacted. Thank you, Helena. May just take you up on that.
Yeah, it's we'll also mention it tomorrow there on the convention show that we're hosting as well.
Just want to mention as well, sorry, David did actually say his real name is Healer. So I just thought it was a coincidence that maybe he was a faith healer or something and he was calling himself. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's correct. Yeah, he says about I'm in Ireland. Oh, he's in Ireland. Oh, great. Are you in Ireland now too? Cool.
Yes. Excellent.
Alice says, congratulations, Tom. So, Tom, where can people buy the books?
So yeah, well, Amazon is probably the best place to get it, to be honest. When I say it, there are a few books out there that I've written. So one of them, you may as well go through them if that's okay with you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so the most controversial one is Cromwell, An Honourable Enemy. Another one is Cromwell Was Framed. Both of those are non-fiction, academic-y type books that outline the case for Cromwell. And then the novel, which I just love. Well, I just loved writing the novel because it gave me such a freedom. But it's a very interesting story of Cromwell's life. It's his fictional biography, and it's called The Protector: The Fall and Rise of Oliver Cromwell. All available on Amazon. The publisher is John Hunt Publishing, and you can get it there on the website there too. There's a portal for sales. I'm on Facebook if anybody wants to try and get in touch with me. So I don't have a website or anything, but that's it. Just go on Amazon. And again, like I say, this is not to buy the holiday home in the Seychelles because I'm not taking royalties. This is to get the message out to the folks.
Or a house on a sea of shells or something like that.
Yeah.
Just on the sea.
Yeah, exactly.
Alice says, great, thanks, and everyone else. And I'll be at the convention as well. Yeah, we'll mention that tomorrow there, sister. We'll put that out there. Thank you, Tom. It's been great to see you there. The next show is a Halloween extravaganza free, folks. It's the end of season show. Experience over 5 hours of the weird and wonderful. Special guests make it for fantastic chats and discussions. We'll have the Halloween mega draw will be drawn, and also a live premiere of Island of Rams Revealed. So that's on the next show, the 30th of October, Sunday the 30th. Tom, it's been a pleasure.
No problem, Ante. I really enjoyed it. Just to mention to Alice and Haunted Era, whoever Haunted Era is, because they're messaging too at the same time. So thank you, sir.
And thank you to everyone who participated as well. Questions tonight. You've been a brilliant audience to Haunted Era, to everyone in Whitlow Jail tonight there. Eleanor as well. Great talk, Tom. Really great work. I'm really interested. Thanks for having him, Anthony. And Alice as well. Thank you, Tom. Great evening. Thank you, Anthony, there. And it's great, everyone else. Christine, everyone else who's participated tonight, talk tonight. I won't see you next time. I'll see you in the near distance. Goodbye for now, folks.
Take care, everybody.
I haven't pressed off yet.